Thank you to today's podcast sponsor, Ancestral Supplements. You guys have been messaging me, telling me that you've tried the protein and you've fallen in love, and you absolutely both love the flavor. You love that it's bone broth based, so it's not necessarily going to be from whey source. And then you also love the texture. It's so rich and creamy without feeling like too thick and gummy in the mouth. And what I do is I just mix it with my raw milk. I don't even put ice in there. Although if you wanted to, that would be delicious as well. Go check it out. Go try the Ancestral Supplement protein powder if you haven't yet, and I would love to hear your thoughts. You can save 15% with code Homegrown at checkout if you hop over to ancestralsupplements.com/homegrown. Welcome to the Homegrown Podcast. I'm your host, Liz Hazelmeyer, along with my husband, Joey.
Good afternoon.
And together we hope to educate, inspire, and equip you in your pursuit of true nourishment. Today's guest is Christine Cimabue. She is a passionate leader in the construction industry and dedicated to advocating for healthier homes. Her journey starts in 2011, and I want to go ahead and jump right in because I want to hear firsthand from your experience without giving too much detail away to the audience. So welcome to the show, Christine.
Hi, thank you for having me.
We're so excited. So talk us through what happened in 2011 and what this has brought you to today in your work.
Well, unfortunately, it's a story that probably many can relate to. And it started with I thought that I was going to enter into a very exciting time in my life, purchasing my very first home. It was a tiny little condo. My background has always been in construction. And so what I could get was a tiny little townhouse that needed a whole lot of love. And so the plan was always to do like a cosmetic renovation to it. So I was excited about that. I thought I had all my ducks in a row. I had the realtor, I had the home inspector. I even walked through it. And I get a call like day one of demo after we've closed on the home that all work had to stop because all of the walls in the kitchen were covered in like black, the worst of the worst mold, like floor to ceiling. It was everywhere. Very scary at the time because nothing was visible. There was zero signs until the cabinetry came down. And so some people think like, oh, if there's mold in my home, it's going to be like crawling up the walls and you'll see it. But no, that's not always the case. And so what led to this terrible mold instance is that there was an old drain line for the second level that had a crack in it. And just every time the shower was used, it was just like spraying water behind the walls. So yeah, it was not an expense I was prepared for. It was not anything I was prepared for. But that situation got remediated and corrected. I learned a ton going through that process that a home inspector is not like the end all be all and just, is going to be looking for mold in every little nook and cranny. But with that, I continued on. I worked for many other contractors. I was involved in a lot of projects. And I started to see this like continued theme of homeowners just like giving full control over to the contractor, just like focusing so much on aesthetic.
Yeah.
Like I really want it to look like a certain way. But when it came to the implementation, the contractor had free reign. And it almost felt like this disconnect of the homeowner stepping back of like, well, I don't know what I don't know. I'm not in construction, so I'm just going to leave it to the contractor. Mm-hmm. But I saw a lot of bad construction. Wow. And nobody spoke up about it. So here I am speaking up about it because it's a huge investment and we're not going to just sit back and, let contractors do what they've always done and make the homeowners feel like they're not empowered to speak up for the health of their home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think a common misconception is that if there's mold, you'll be able to smell it, right? I don't see anything in the walls. I don't smell anything. And so for you, when you walked in and you did your due diligence, I mean, you had your home inspector come in and give the all clear. then to rip down those walls and to see that hidden mold behind, like floor to ceiling, if people can actually visualize that, that's intense.
It was a
That's a
lot.
lot.
Yeah,
So
it was left that way. It was undiscovered for probably many, many years.
mm, yeah. So when they take that down for the contractors then demoing, are they like, "Hey, we need to pause and like go put on a hazmat suit?" Like, do you bring a mold remediator in? What does that process look like if you do stumble upon mold?
Yes, good point. Because if your contractor does discover mold and they just say, hey, we're just going to keep going, like we'll just rip it out, it's
Mm,
fine, that's a big red flag. Like a contractor, a large majority of the time, is not also a licensed mold remediator. So contractors should not be bleaching anything, which
mm,
I gasp anytime I hear that from the clients' contractors of like, oh, we'll just bleach it, it'll be fine, or we'll just, disinfect it. No, if there's visible mold, uh, a mold remediation company needs to come in. Maybe even a mold inspection company needs to come in and actually evaluate like the extent and come up with the protocol to actually do a thorough mold remediation. Now, I come in after the fact. And I hope that one day, like mold remediation will not be such a prevalent thing. But the rebuilding part is just as important as like getting to the root cause of the mold to begin with.
that's a great point. So let's talk about some of those root causes. Is it always a water leak? Could it just be natural condensation? Like, what are some of the things leading to mold accumulation in homes?
Yeah, not just a catastrophic flood where insurance is called and like that's very rare. And not always is insurance, going to get involved. There's
Hmm.
a lot of restrictions around what home insurance companies will actually pay for when it comes to water damage. But statistically, uh, construction litigation, when contractors are in litigation with homeowners, 70% of the time it's the result of water damage somewhere, whether it be the leak in the roof, the leak in the plumbing, like something to do with water and moisture, water intrusion in the basement. It is very, very common. And that's just the amount of times that it actually goes to litigation.
Hmm.
There's countless times when the homeowner just feels defeated and isn't taking the contractor to court. But no, it's not always a leak. It can also just be vapor and moisture. There are certain building materials, which is why building construction is so important to get right. But there are certain building materials that can act as a vapor barrier. And if that vapor barrier is in the wrong location of your exterior wall, that can lead to condensation and thus mold growth on the backside of it.
Mm-hmm. I see that sometimes with windows. I think, like if you have a broken window seal, right, you can let some water in. Does that ever cause any sort of mold around the trim, or can it filter behind the drywall? Or is that a separate issue?
That is one very common area of water intrusion. We are very adamant, like every project should go through thorough testing during construction. We had a client, Julie, up in Northern California that was doing a renovation and she added 11 windows to her home and did an addition. And I was adamant, you have to have leak testing of these windows. But most of the time, the contractor will say, what are you talking about? These are new construction windows. They're newly installed. They're
Mm-hmm.
great. And my response is always, how do we know that? How do we
Mm-hmm.
know that the windows aren't leaking if we're not leak testing them? And so there was a little bit of back and forth there. But as the homeowner being empowered, she knew, okay, I'm going to push for some leak testing. Sure enough, she had leak testing coordinated, and 9 out of the 11 windows that were just installed were leaking.
No way. What
Yeah.
does a leak test do? Like, what are they like spraying it with a hose? Surely it's not that elementary, but like,
Mm,
what do you do for a leak test?
So there are standards. There's a site that's ASTM, the American Standards for Testing of Materials and Building Materials as well. And there is a protocol for thorough leak testing of windows. It is not a requirement in building codes.
Mm,
So residential construction does not require really anything to be leak tested except for your shower pan.
wow.
And that's about it. So there are standards for leak testing. I am a fan of any leak testing is better than nothing at all. So if that means like last minute someone has to get out there with a garden hose, that's going to be better than nothing at all. But there are procedures that are designed to really stress test the windows
Mm.
better.
Okay, so this is the window's been installed. We're applying water in some way. You want to see if something gets through inside the home, correct?
Yeah.
I'm
Okay.
also thinking like wind and pressure and flexing and that kind of stuff because, when you're going through a windstorm, it's definitely gonna be a little bit different than just water running down the window.
That's true. And so you said 9 of the 11 brand new windows that she was going to put in. Because I think that's wild because you'd think, oh, it's brand new material, it's tight seal, there's caulking, it's going to be good to
Mhm.
go. But you're right. If you get in, how many different guys or girls are walking the job and your window person's up and then your next thing is up and you're framing or you're doing drywall, all these things are usually happening so quickly. So to kind of slow the process down and say, let's make sure the foundation of this home is really sealed is something that, of course, doesn't happen very often in construction. I'm sure it's a time and money thing. Um, what other things did you become aware of that homeowners are just maybe like ignorant to in terms of renovating a home or building a new home that they can look out for to make sure that their homes are really healthy?
Hmm. I would say a lot. And I don't mean that like in a derogatory way. Understandably, a homeowner should not be expected to have contractor level knowledge, right?
Mm,
That's why they're hiring the contractor. But a homeowner needs to be able to effectively communicate their expectations.
mm,
So I can sometimes see that as so frustrating for the homeowner of like, build me a healthy home. I want a home free of mold and water damage. And then the contractors say, yeah, sure, no problem, we got it. And then they're framing the home and there's moldy lumber everywhere in the home. It's like, what the heck happened here? Like I told you, I didn't want that. And the contractor's like, well, that's just lumberyard mold. That's fine. So
mm,
there's so many opportunities for disconnect and miscommunication and unaligned expectations. It feels like a huge weight. And if you've ever gone through a renovation or a new build and you at the end of that experience felt like defeated, like I never want to do that again, or just like that, I'm so glad that's over. That's not the feeling you want to have.
mm-hmm,
It should feel exciting and feel like everyone knows what your expectations are, like you don't have to micromanage the project. But the missing piece there is communicating the expectations on the front end, like
mm-hmm,
before anyone's picking up a hammer, of documenting and communicating like this is what I mean when I'm referring to no moldy lumber installed in my home, like no visible mold on any of the lumber. If it is, I'm going to expect you to rip it out and replace it, or we're going to be discussing remediation. So like,
mm-hmm.
I mean, communicate really what you mean, um, as far as expectations.
So how common is that? So if someone's getting materials from a lumber yard, is like 80% of it going to be covered in this moldy
Hmm.
mess, or is it less common? Like how diligent do these contractors have to be then when they're sourcing materials for your home?
For every project that I'm involved with my one-on-one clients, every single project will have some level of lumber that needs to be rejected.
Wow.
That's just by the nature of, and we do discuss like with the lumber yard, ordering protocols, delivering it when it's not rainy,
Mm,
storing it off of the ground so it's not sitting in mud. We do go through all of the steps, but still, there needs to be some oversight, whether that's the contractor or the framer. Somebody needs to be doing quality control.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there's still, it's not going to arrive perfect.
Mm-hmm. And so for folks who are like, well, do I care if the 2x4s that are framing out my door frame have a little bit of mold in them, if they're covered up in drywall and plaster and paint? Like, how do you communicate to those folks that what's inside of your walls still matters and that impacts the home and the healthiness of that home?
Very good point. And that might also be an argument of a
Mm-hmm.
contractor of
Mm-hmm.
like, well, you're fine. You're going to put drywall up and, that's air sealed. The truth is, it's not air sealed. That is not what is behind your walls, is what's in your indoor air environment.
Mm.
But going back to why it's so important to like detail all of this on the front end, ideally with the architect. But you want to understand where that air sealing layer is. Like, is it, getting a little bit technical, but like, is it on the sheathing of your exterior? Is your attic ventilated or is it sealed? Like all of these components, like how the foundation is designed,
Mm-hmm.
this will all help you understand where your interior air and where your exterior air starts.
Mm-hmm.
And so um, typically the exterior wall or the sheathing, sometimes plywood, that is typically where your air barrier begins from the interior to the exterior. So like the insulation, that is contributing to your indoor air environment. So are you going to use fiberglass that has sometimes formaldehyde in it? Each of these selections can make an impact on your home.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wouldn't have even thought about that. So, are there like quote healthier building material alternatives that you guide your clients towards when they're like, "Hey, I want to build the most pristine home ever." Talk to me about obviously no moldy lumber. The insulation, I want to talk about that. What's your alternative? Is it a spray foam? Like, I feel like everything is going to have some kind of interesting chemical component, but what are the things you're guiding your clients towards?
The insulation is an interesting topic that really does take a lot of education on, because it does contribute to your indoor air, but it also contributes to the performance of your home, like how comfortable your
Yeah.
home is. And so there is a big push now, even in like your region and climate, to push for spray foam insulation, because it's a couple of reasons. It's air seals, it insulates really well, and it's very fast. You get it done quick and then you put the drywall up. But there's a lot of downsides to spray foam. It is permanent. It's not coming out. You can't just pull like that insulation out of the wall.
Mm-hmm.
It's permanent. So you have to remediate it out.
Mm-hmm.
If the mixture on site isn't correct, it can off gas for a very long time. In some instance, I've had a client say 7 years later, she was still reacting to the spray foam.
Wow.
And in short, there's many others, but in short, it requires a perfect install for it to not potentially be problematic. And there's better options. There's better options that aren't going to have these chemicals and add moisture to the lumber. And so we typically will talk through, depending on the chemical sensitivities of the client, but we will talk through potentially doing like a formaldehyde free insulation or a mineral wool insulation, which is like spun lava rock, basically. Pretty
Wow.
cool, naturally hydrophobic.
Wow.
And then if we have clients that are maybe in the like their children have pans or pandas, or the family's like very susceptible to like chemical sensitivities, we might go to like a natural sheep's wool insulation, which that can be a great option. It's not permanent and doesn't have all these toxic binders. So there is a good, better, best option for every single thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's insane. But do people push back on like the fire hazardness of a sheep's wool insulation? Like, is that a really flammable material, or is that not even a concern when you're looking at insulation?
So sheep's wool is naturally flame retardant without having to add a flame retardant.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Here I'm thinking it's going to like ignite, and wouldn't didn't you have the same assumption?
As we're talking about this, my mind is just exploding because I am not a contractor, but I have done a lot of projects with people's homes in my own house, many of which with guidance, some without, but like
DIY.
it, the amount of stuff that you can roll into Home Depot and buy that like what she was talking about at the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
make your house look the way you want it to look.
It's so true.
But I don't know what's in that stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy. There's paint that is called like Kills.
For mold.
And I don't want to like derail the conversation, but I have so many like little questions about like, I mean, like, is that a valuable thing to put on a potentially mold?
Avoid that aisle at Home Depot.
There you go.
Okay. Avoid any DIY mold remediation at Home Depot. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So insulation can go anywhere from a spray-on highly toxic formaldehyde-ridden foam, which is probably cheap and easiest, to what you're saying for families who have highly sensitive kiddos or adults in the home, a sheep's wool insulation. That's got to be like how we were doing it OG, right? Like that's got to be just like the most amazing use of natural fibers, in my opinion. It's like a
Yeah.
sweater for your home. It's literally a sweater for your home. Yeah.
Yes. And all of these topics, I mean, and the insulation is a big one because if you think about like even your home now, all of those exterior walls have insulation in them.
Yeah.
Like volume wise, that makes a big impact on your home. And so, many of us cannot do it all, everything that we would love to, just budget wise. But if you can select materials that are going to have the biggest impact on your home, that can be a big game changer.
Mm-hmm.
And also think about the things that you're not ever going to be able to do again.
Mm-hmm.
You're not ever going to be able to pour your foundation again, build your exterior walls. Like if you could put your budget towards like those items, and then, the decorative light fixtures and the faucets, and maybe those can be swapped out like over time if you have to start with like a budget brand.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great piece of advice. You've mentioned foundation a few times. What in there are you guiding specifically for your clients to make sure that things are built the best way possible?
Foundations, well, that's what, like the rain boots of your home,
Yeah.
like where it starts. And having a solid foundation, whether it's a concrete slab or a basement or has a crawl space, how you treat that foundation is going to, really make an impact on the longevity of the home, but also in some instances can lead to water intrusion itself. If you have an older home and you have a slab foundation, there may not be a vapor retarder underneath it. And so water can get pulled up through the slab. Same thing with a lot of older basements. Basements, per building code, basements require a layer of damp proofing, which is AKA waterproofing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that doesn't last forever,
Mm-hmm.
and it breaks down and degrades over time. And so many of these homes with basements 50, 60 years old, that damp proofing is breaking down, but who's re-excavating around their basement and re-waterproofing? So when we're talking about foundations, we are talking about building a forever type of home. Like what can we do to treat these basement walls so that it is a one and done, no water intrusion solution? And unfortunately, many homes are built just to basic building code standards, and that's just not enough.
Mm. Is it ever worth it, in your opinion, to forgo a livable basement space and just have your finished surfaces like above the earth? That might be a dumb question, but like if it's too hard to waterproof and you're going to run into issues, is it just better to avoid even having a basement in that sense?
If a family could forego a basement, that's going to definitely help on the maintenance side. If you have an existing basement, it is a good consideration to leave it unfinished.
Hmm.
If you have a new basement, it is a good idea to leave it unfinished for, I would say, for at least 2 years. Leave it unfinished as much as you could because there's so much moisture in there.
Mm-hmm.
So much with the slab, with the walls. That that basement needs to dry out over time.
Mm-hmm.
And there's an article that estimates that new construction homes, like with a basement, release like several gallons of water a day for the first 2 to 3 years, just
Wow.
in vapor between the slab, the basement walls, thin set for the tile, paint, like all of this that goes into building needs to dry out.
Wow. What about having a window in your basement or a walkout? Joey's laughing because, like, we're
Yeah.
in my basement right now and I have a big window and a walkout. So I feel like half my basement is not underground.
Three
That's
quarters of
good.
our basement is not underground because
That's
like
good
these
though.
sides and the back would be not underground.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
front half of ours is, but it's downhill. We're up on top of a hill, so I'm hoping that maybe we got some drainage.
Yeah.
Anyways,
That is a good scenario. So being perched up on a hill,
Okay.
so you don't have neighbor, property sloping towards your
Right.
basement. That's
Mm-hmm.
great. If anyone's going to do a basement, walkout basement is king because
Okay.
you're not fully subterranean. You have three-ish walls are underground, and so you can get a lot more airflow in there, and some sunlight in there. So yeah, a walkout basement can be great.
Okay, good. All right, we're already like A plus on the scorecard. I want to talk to you about radon. Do you, because this is a
Yeah.
big deal in the Midwest, especially like my specific part of town. Radon. I'm serious. Like,
no, I'm laughing
r-
because we were just talking about
I
this.
know. So radon gas is like a very naturally occurring thing that
Yes.
can come up into your space. And everyone likes to have different laws around like what is the maximum level. Even Kentucky has a different rating than Ohio. And so I worry about our radon um, levels. And so should people be measuring radon? When do you recommend a radon like mitigation system? Is this something that you talk about with your clients very often?
Yes. Okay, do you know what your levels are?
I think okay, we bought the house like 9 years ago, and I want to say we're like a 3.
Okay, but do you know what they are today?
No, I don't. I have no idea. Does it
Okay,
change?
homework assignment. Anyone that has a basement or anyone that's on the east-ish coast,
Yeah.
um, you should always be monitoring radon.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because it does change.
Oh,
It
okay.
does change. And yes, 3, you want to be below 4.
Okay.
Definitely below 4. And so radon is actually, I believe, the updated statistic is that it is currently the number one leading cause of lung cancer of non-smokers.
Yeah. I've read that too. It's
And it
terrifying.
it just sneaks up on you. I mean, it takes a little bit of time to probably get to that level, but it is, and it's not just an East Coast thing. Here in Central California, we have radon as well.
Wow.
So, as a best practice, like anyone that is doing a new build, have the soil tested, but also when you are building your basement, having a radon mitigation system installed. And sometimes that's passive, which just means there's no mechanics to it. But
Hmm.
it's just basically a a pipe that is allowing the gases to escape. If you find that radon levels are very high or you're unable to control them, you can add essentially a motorized radon mitigation system to that. So everyone should know what their levels are. You can, even if you wanted to start with, you can get something off Amazon, but if you wanted like a indoor air quality monitor slash radon slash particulate, there is a good brand called Air Things. And
Air things like
yeah,
THINGS. Okay.
their little system monitors that. It is a Wi-Fi device, so
Okay.
take note of that.
Mm-hmm.
But you could also just get like a little battery operated radon reader and stick it, move it around your house. But radon is a big contributor to toxic homes,
Mm-hmm.
and it should be tested and monitored, and a system put in place. It's going to be challenging after the fact, after you build to, you got to dig some concrete up to put it in.
Okay.
But yeah, but
Can
three
I
is good.
can I slow us down and just ask a really ridiculous question?
Sure.
What is radon and where does it come from?
You love to do that.
Radon is a soil gas. So it's just naturally occurring. It comes
Okay.
from the soil.
And so where you like kind of plant your house, if you will,
Mm.
there's radon in the soil that because you have a basement, it's kind of seeping in.
Yes, more prevalent with basements, but it can still, of course, happen with a slab foundation. I would say much more common in basements. That's why monitoring it is a good idea. And monitoring, I mean, there's radon, but there's also carbon monoxide,
Mm-hmm.
carbon dioxide. So like having, um, I relate it to this. Like if you were to go to a car dealership and we're like so excited to buy like a brand new car, you get in the car, but there's no dashboard. Like you have a gas gauge, that's it.
Mm.
Like, would you buy that car for $50,000? Probably not. But yet we're building or purchasing homes for $1 million, and all that we have is a thermostat.
Mm-hmm.
We have no dashboard with like radon, VOCs, particulate, air pressure. We don't have any information about our homes, just the temperature.
Yeah, that's a great point. So you're pro continuously monitoring. There was a radon like at home monitor I was interested in getting for our house. Would you generally trust one that you can get on like online that can just sit in your basement and give you the levels currently?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. If you just want to stick one like in the basement, I'm a fan of also putting it in like bedrooms as well. Like even carbon monoxide as well. I mean, it might be in the smoke detector, but again, by building code, it's not a requirement to have a carbon monoxide detector in every bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
But if someone's waking up with headaches or just kind of unexplained like brain fog, it could be radon. It could be potentially mold. It could be chemical sensitivities. But without having any data and like monitoring, it's kind of hard to tell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's so many different variables there. Is it as simple as like, okay, my kids are going to play in the basement, I haven't yet gotten a radon mitigation system yet, just like open the window, let it air out in there?
Yeah.
Okay, so that could be like a free health hack for people that are like, I'm not sure what my radon is, but like if they're spending hours in the basement and I have big windows like we do, open a window and just kind of let the air freshen, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Could open up that window. Maybe there's a ceiling fan in there or like a standing fan,
Yeah.
like getting some air circulation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have an air doctor, air filter thing. I don't know if that would help. I have to check if that's even relevant with that. But like maybe an air purifier down there too. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm so down for that. I am so before people start like ripping down their walls and you know tearing up their finished basements and such, the monitoring stuff is really interesting,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because obviously, and we'll probably get to even more of this, a new build custom home is going to be like
Gold standard.
yeah, it's like, man, you could really set yourself up, work with Christine, and build a house that's just squared away.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to guess there's a lot of people listening to this that currently have a home, and they're going to be there for the next 12 to 24 to 36 months. What are some of the primary things? Like, can people go out and test for mold? Are there things to look for? And then what are like the first steps to dealing with it? Because I feel like we kind of moved from that, and it was almost like, man, we can freak a lot of people out about the mold that's in their house, but sometimes I feel like it's hard to know where to start.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, my unpopular opinion about that is don't start investigating for mold unless you're prepared for the whole kit and caboodle. Like
Mm-hmm.
if you suspect there might be mold, no one's really having like, wild symptoms or like severe health implications, and you want to go down the path of mold testing and investigating, be prepared to also go down the path of remediation.
Mm.
Because if you test and then you find out, oh wow, it's more than I thought, you're just going to ruminate and sit with that. And so, I mean, be all in if you're going to go down the path of mold testing. There are some like DIY mold kits. They're not really DIY. Like, to really do a thorough mold test, like an ERMI test is one it's testing dust, but that also can have user error.
Mm-hmm.
It's a dust test. So you take like a Swiffer pad and you test dust, can get false, very high readings. So if there's suspect that there's mold, there's health issues in the family related to that, hire a mold inspector. I defer to like a mold consultant or someone who can walk through and vet mold inspectors, because that is a little bit of a different business.
Yeah.
Kind of got to weed out the good with the bad.
Yeah.
But I'm also a big fan of a mold inspector should not also be the mold remediator. That
Okay.
could be a little bit of a conflict of interest. Like, get the mold inspector to come up with the protocol, then vet and talk with multiple mold remediation companies. Hopefully you're having guidance with all of this. And then that mold remediation priority number one should be addressing the root cause. Like, why is the mold there?
Mm-hmm.
Is it because of the window? And are they just remediating the mold and not correcting the window? So it's going to come back. So it should be a really in-depth investigation. And it is very, very, very costly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Very costly.
I like your point of having the investigator be different from the remediator, because the more we've dealt with mold remediation, and it feels kind of like
It feels icky sometimes.
it feels like an icky business. I don't know. It was like, oh, your insurance policy allows for $5,000 for mold remediation. Here's your invoice for exactly $5,000.
Yeah.
And it's like, are you joking? Like, that feels like you're just trying to launder money. Like, what are you doing?
It's like, boy, that was lucky.
Yeah, I was like, what does this even mean? And this was in the larger scheme, like a whole big home remediation that we can't even get into, or remodel. But is there like a governing body or organization that you trust for mold inspectors? Like, are they a part of a network, or is there like a group of people that kind of are already pre-vetted for people to like search online? Or is it just
There are some organizations online. I know that like SIRS and patients that deal with SIRS, they are working on like having almost like SIRS certified type of mold inspectors. There are certifications online, but the problem is that a company could have a certification, but does the inspector that is coming out that day carry that certification? So it's a lot of vetting.
Yeah.
On the rebuild side of things, I'm more of the fan of, the $6 2x4. It's probably a whole lot more cost effective to take that thing out and put a new one in
Yeah.
instead of the sanding and the chemical treatment and the encapsulating and all of that. So
Yeah.
I'm a fan of taking out as much of as possible and really investigating like the whole root cause, make sure that's corrected. And then when it gets corrected, it needs to be likely leak tested if it's like water intrusion from the roof or the window. Leak test the darn thing before more drywall goes back up.
Mm-hmm.
What about fogging companies?
Mm,
Oh, yeah.
no.
You're
You're
not a fan.
not a
Okay,
fan.
talk to us.
No,
Tell us why.
fogging is not a remediation strategy. And I mean, I am not a mold inspector and mold remediator, so I'm sure someone will tell me otherwise, but no, like mold needs to be removed.
Mm-hmm.
Mold doesn't need to be killed, doesn't need to be fogged. I'm sure there's someone listening that's probably gone through a fogging of their HVAC system, their
Yeah.
ductwork. That's not removing anything.
Mm.
That's not decontaminating. So one of the biggest areas of a failed remediation, and I would say a large percentage of remediations are not successful, like to be completely decontaminated. There's, no one's reacting to the mold, and that's not on fault of the remediator. It's that to really have all eyes, like walls have to come down. We have to like see what's going on behind the walls. They're spot testing behind the walls, and they're doing dust tests and air samples and all these things, but that's not really getting to everything. So that's part of it, but also there's a lot of inspectors that overlook the mechanical system,
Mm.
because that mold situation in the bathroom is not isolated to your bathroom the moment that you turn on your central heating and cooling system. That is designed to move all of the air in the home around.
Mm.
So, the ductwork and your mechanical system is a really good area to investigate.
Okay. Yeah, we've thought about we haven't done a ductwork cleaning, but like we've thought about that. So if you are someone who has had mold in the home at one point, say you got it removed, you're saying if at any point while that mold was there, it probably circulated through the home's HVAC, right?
It's very likely.
Through that
Yeah.
ductwork. So then how do you should probably go get that cleaned, right? Are there specific people who clean for mold, or is it just like I'm vacuuming it out and here's all the dust, like what does that look like?
Well, this is why I'm not in the mold remediation category, because my take on it is it can't be
Mm,
remediated.
yeah, okay.
And I know many do like are proponents of ductwork cleaning. And my reasoning is that if you've ever seen flexible ductwork, maybe
Mhm.
you've seen it in your attic or at the hardware store, it's like a giant foiled wrap slinky.
Yeah.
There's like so many nooks and crannies in there. And so when they get in there with like this agitating brush, they're not getting in all of those little nooks and crannies.
Mhm.
It's not possible. So that is my take. And it's also very easy to puncture and poke holes in it. So flexible duct, if it warrants, should be replaced.
Mm, mhm.
But that is a big costly expense. But that is also why on the preventative side, I've already seen numerous mold scenarios where it's like, this is horrific, how did this happen, and piecing together like how this happened and build in a way so that it's not even a possible scenario. So I guess I shouldn't say possible because anything's possible, but in the case of like mechanical system, we are designing and building homes to have all rigid ductwork,
Mm.
just like you'd see it like a commercial
Yeah.
space, so that it can be cleaned if it
Mm,
needs to be. So though that's one of those things you do it, one and done, but it can be cleaned.
yeah.
Did some older homes get built with rigid only? Is that a newer build thing to use the flex? Because I think because we rebuilt our most of our house, and we did move some ductwork. It's all pretty flat, and it would not be flexible.
Yeah.
Now, do
Yeah.
I know for a fact that we have no flexible in the house? No, I don't know that. There probably is somewhere, maybe there is, but I'm just curious. Is that a new build thing to use flex line for HVAC? Has that been around for a long time?
Um, older homes had nothing at all.
Oh.
And some older homes had heating only and,
Yeah.
and used rigid. Older homes had asbestos in the
Yeah.
rigid.
Yeah.
Um, and just like when you think about like plumbing, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's copper and
Mm-hmm.
there's PEX, which is like the new kind of plastic. Um, Same thing with mechanical system. Like it's flexible is really easy to like throw up there. You can bend it. Like it's very easy on the install side. Rigid duct, that's pretty challenging to do in residential. So
Mm-hmm.
it's possible that you could have rigid duct and it can be cleaned and make sure all the joints are sealed. So it's possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great point to say. I'm like creating a list in my head for when we build a house someday. Like, make sure your foundation is solid. You know where your water barrier is. Make sure that your um, HVAC is not that little accordion slinky looking thing, right? Then it's hard and it can be cleaned. Make sure that all your windows are sealed and tested. Same with water pipes too. Um, and then also like put wool in your insulation if you can. I think that's like the coolest thing. I was going to ask about internal material. So something that we've been trying to do in our home. Our home was built in 1978, I believe. And we've just been trying to take out the carpet where we can. Our
Mm.
whole first floor has solid hardwoods, which we feel crazy, but we say like we can smell the difference. Like when we went from a bunch of different carpets and tiles to all hardwood on the first floor, it smells cleaner. I don't know how to describe it. Are there internal materials that you are pointing your clients to in the name of health, and why is that?
Yes, there are better materials, especially when it comes to flooring. Carpet is going to hold on to more dust and debris and allergens. Um, Tile is really friendly if
Mm,
there's a lot of water or kids splashing around. So tile can be friendly. Solid wood is great, but also it's not like a waterproof floor.
sure. Hmm.
So you want to be, kind of goes back to, you want to really know what's happening on the install side because, well, in your instance, you have a basement, but if you had a slab foundation, what's the moisture content of the slab foundation? Like in the basement, if you don't know the moisture content of that, you can't even select a floor
Hmm.
because the installation guidelines of that wood flooring, it will tell you, and this goes for any plank style flooring, pull up the installation instructions on the website and it will tell you the moisture content of what the wood should be and the moisture content of the slab. And if your slab has too much moisture, you should not be installing that floor, or it needs different type of underlayment or something. So that is a pretty common question about like flooring.
Hmm.
And my response is, well, what's the subfloor? What's it going on? What's the moisture content of it?
Mm-hmm.
Are you anticipating a lot of like spills and water? And how chemically sensitive are you? Because that will play a role into like the adhesives used. So,
Hmm.
um, yes, there are like better made plank floors. Typically, they're US made and not imported from China. Um, but you want to make sure that like all of that is documented, right? So, like if you had an issue with the plank flooring and it
Hmm.
started to buckle,
Hmm.
and you went to the manufacturer, they'd say, great, can you send me like a copy of that like moisture test that you did on the slab? They're going to want to see that like you followed the installation guidelines. So
Mm-hmm.
Moisture testing is really important, and then making sure that there's like proper underlayment for whatever floor is selected.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, moisture also comes up a lot when I'm thinking about bathrooms. I know we have like bathrooms that we need to redo, and obviously, if you're building new, you can start with a clean slate. What are ways that you can sort of waterproof your bathroom so that you don't run into an issue down the line?
Bathrooms are a big one. They're pretty big contributors to a lot of leaks. Is that where you guys had your leak? Was it from a bathroom?
Sort of.
Just give her the quick.
Ours was like the water had been turned on in the bathtub, but the city had turned off our water, and our 6-year-old like didn't shove the thing back to the wall, but had plugged the tub with a rubber plug. And then
Uh-huh.
our city turned the water on in the middle of the night. So it ran for 2 hours. So it overflowed the tub because the tub overflow couldn't keep up, and then found a little crack in the tile in our bathroom floor, and then eventually flooded our ceiling. Our ceiling of our kitchen fell to the ground, and then our basement was completely flooded, probably an inch of water on the carpet all the way down. So it hit all 3 levels of our house. And we ended up ripping down 5 walls on our main floor and opening the whole thing up and redoing everything. And it was a
We rebuilt the
nightmare.
first floor and the
It
basement.
was a nightmare.
Everything.
So,
Oh my gosh.
but
So a little project that you were saying, it was
it was
not a
so
little
bad.
project.
This was a long
It
time
was a
ago.
very large one.
But like when I think about like our master bathroom needs to be redone, and I always think like, why do people just use regular tile and grout? It seems like a bad idea. You have to constantly regrout. There's things that are breaking seals. I just want a waterproof bathroom, and I'm like, how can I get that? So are there good materials we can use? Is there like a thicker tile or a bigger tile is better because it's less grout? Like I'm just so interested in these little details.
Yes, there is a better way to build every single room of your home, including like the exterior. For bathrooms, you can consider like going in with the mindset of creating a wet room.
Mm,
Like if you've been to Europe or you've been to Mexico, like those bathrooms are solid.
yeah.
It's a shower. There's no glass. There's no wicker baskets. There's no wood baseboards. There's, not these like decorative vanities. It is a shower head, a toilet, a floating vanity. Like it's a wet room. All of the walls have tile or cement, or they're designed to get wet. And so treating a bathroom like that, which is a little bit of an adjustment,
Mm-hmm.
because the bathroom also isn't really designed to store materials. Like if you have a cardboard box of Q-tips under your sink and that sink gets like a slow leak, now you've got this like moldy box underneath your sink. So
Mm-hmm.
bathrooms aren't really designed to be housing storage overflow, which is a little bit different than how we live here.
Mm-hmm.
But if the bathroom can be completely waterproofed, that's not just like where the shower is. That's like the entire floor of the entire bathroom should be designed to get wet, especially when it's on like a second level and your floor is plywood.
Yeah.
The
Mm-hmm.
whole bathroom should be designed to get wet. And managing humidity is a big thing in there as well, making sure that humidity is in check. Have you ever showered in there and when you get out of the shower, the mirrors are like steamy?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, that steam is not just isolated to the mirrors,
Mm-hmm.
right? That steam is also on all of the walls in that bathroom. It's just evident on the mirrors.
Sure. Yeah.
So you want to make sure that your, exhaust system that is taking and pulling the humidity out is doing a sufficient job. So
Mm-hmm.
a lot of things that you can consider when doing a bathroom, but going with the mindset that the more waterproofing, making it like bulletproof against water can be a really good selection. And those are all things that, in the case of a new build, are being walked through and specified and documented with the architect.
Mm-hmm. How do you feel about tile like as a shower floor? Do you tend to stay away from that? Like, do you want more of a solid piece on the floor if you're not doing a bathtub?
For like standing showers, we will work with the client's aesthetic and what they will
Mm-hmm.
let
Yeah.
us do. Because there are one piece shower pans,
Mm-hmm.
the acrylic shower pans. Those are great. There's no grout, there's no tile, but aesthetically, it's not what everyone envisions when they are
True.
spending thousands of dollars on a
Mm-hmm.
bathroom renovation.
Yeah.
But they're durable.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say we do a combination of like one piece shower pans, or we will use like large format tile that has like a slip resistancy factor to it.
Okay. Yeah. To minimize the amount of grout
Yeah.
or, okay. Yeah. That totally
Yeah.
makes sense. I love that. I feel like whoever buys our house from us, whenever we move, it's just, they're going to be so blessed by all the things we're going to do. I can't wait. My final like category. So we've talked about like foundation. We talked about air quality when we talked about radon and getting something to measure your air quality. I think that's super important. But my final category I have in my head is like EMF and like
Hmm.
Wi-Fi and routers and your smart meter. And I know a lot of people struggle with EMF sensitivity if you've got sensitive kiddos. I know that that's a big thing. Is that something that you addressed when you're talking to people about building a home and how you can build a home that's sort of EMF friendly or sensitive? Like how do those conversations work?
Yeah, it's definitely a part of building or renovating. But I do go back to like the hierarchy. Like maybe in your instance, if you're going to do a renovation or a new build, you want to have like a hierarchy so you know like what your number one priority non-negotiable is, and that might be water damage and mold mitigation. So
Mm-hmm.
like that's where you put your emphasis. Number 2 might be EMF avoidance, and then maybe from there it's like we want to get filtered air and then like clean water.
Mm.
So knowing like where you are like putting your funds, and it's like non-negotiable. And so then on the EMF side, there are building materials that do a better job at mitigating outside exposures if you're near to cell towers. But on the inside, that like it's not a bad idea to have like a dumb home that
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have all the electronics and the components on your phone. So that's a really simple way. Just like go back to a regular switch.
Yeah.
Not these like fancy lighting controls, or don't get the smart oven that preheats and the smart dishwasher that turns on. Like everything seems to have all those capabilities these days, but getting like an analog style system, or there's a lot of components that can be hardwired,
Mm-hmm.
meaning the internet cable is directly connected to it, and is connected to then the modem, because you have a router and a modem. The
Mm-hmm.
modem is your internet, and the router is pinging the Wi-Fi signal. So you can still have internet without having Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and Joey's mother-in-law, or sorry, my mother-in-law, Joey's mom has this in their house. They moved to full Ethernet cables. So
Yeah.
it's kind of clunky because when they like plug in a phone or a laptop, you have to, there's like cords, you kind of have to navigate the cords, like really
Love that.
long cords. But they did that because they're Wi-Fi and EMF sensitive. And gosh, Joey was just telling me the other day of like these Bluetooth equipped light bulbs that can be a speaker for your bathroom. And I was like, what a stupid idea. Although like I can understand the
Uh,
convenience of that to have the ability to do that. But you're right. There's like smart, quote, smart technology in so many building materials and choices, like your thermostat, your light bulbs, apparently, the way that you turn on your devices. I know that like even my car, like I can go on my app on my phone and like turn my car on or lock the doors. Like even my car is signaling back and forth wirelessly. So there's so many things that are contributing to the overall EMF rating of your home. And so that's always something that feels a little daunting to me. The way that we've kind of tried to navigate it is like by having a kill switch for our Wi-Fi. So we have times where like there's no Wi-Fi on in the house, which means no streaming, no internet usage, no TV, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's a really interesting thing to think through. I just saw on Instagram the other day if someone was building a house and they put like the Ethernet, what would that be
Like
called?
ports or
Port.
jacks,
Yeah, like jacks in all the rooms. Just like
Yeah.
went
like
back to
outlets. Yeah.
went back to how it used to be. And I was like, see, that is so smart. That is what I want to do if I build a house someday. I think that is brilliant. So
Yes.
cool. What did we miss any of the big categories that you want folks to consider when they're building a healthy home?
I would encourage anyone that's going to be doing a new build to be prepared to be involved,
Mm,
like to emotionally be ready to really set the stage for expectations early on. So much of the frustration and the feeling like my contractor's not listening to me, a lot of that can be mitigated if there's proper planning and documentation and everything lined up beforehand. Because it's equally frustrating for the contractor if they're not, aware or in the loop on things and construction's already started. So,
mm-hmm.
what's the saying? Something with like an ounce of prevention is a pound of cure, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's true, being really involved.
It's kind of one of those things where like the average person is like, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
So before this conversation, I wouldn't have even known to like get a moisture reading on the slab of concrete before you build your house, right? Or do all of these little extra things you wouldn't know. Then that's why the people need to like find and hire consultants like you. So do you have anything else?
I was just gonna say, like, so let's say someone listening to this is not building a house but buying one, and they're gonna start walking through homes.
Mm,
Are there things that they can be looking for? Quick like test kits they can use to. I mean, you walk into a house and you smell like someone's been smoking there.
mm-hmm.
It's very very easy for us at least as non-smokers to be like, don't want this house, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's not the same when you are considering like mold or
Right.
radon or things like this. Are there like test kits people should be walking in with? Should they be like asking for I mean, especially in the housing market of people buying houses above listing price,
Yeah.
it's almost like
And they forego
it's
inspection.
like a trap, right?
That's a very common thing here. They forego inspection and yeah, because the houses are flying off the market in our area. So what do you say to the potential buyer?
Well, okay, let's do a little bit of, I guess, scenario here.
Yeah.
What would an existing home cost in your area?
In our area,
Yeah.
um probably 4 to 600,000.
Okay. And then what does it cost to build that same size home?
Ooh, same size home?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Maybe like a
Smaller homes are
million?
Well, here, Christine, because you would have those facts better than us. And
Okay.
again, knowing that property values in California are going to be different than Ohio, Cincinnati, Ohio.
Ohio.
But let's see.
You
Our
want to do
house.
California prices?
No.
Blow everyone's
The whole
mind.
United States would just cringe.
Yeah. So
We're
we
like, we're so sorry.
our house is a little over 2,000 square feet,
Uh-huh.
not including the basement.
Right.
We do have a full basement, a walkout basement, and then we have 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms.
Mm-hmm.
So that's our house here, and I
Okay.
would say that we're in that like that range price wise. But I guess I wouldn't know what it would cost to build a house like that.
Okay. So sometimes you'll have like neighboring communities, like new construction communities going up, and they'll say like prices starting at like
We've seen
$800,000.
those, yeah.
There's ones that are smaller than our current footprint, and they're going for high fours, they said. So
Okay.
the high
Interesting.
fours to build probably like a 1,500 square foot home, 13 to 1,500 square foot home on
Okay.
a smaller plot too. It really, their yards are real small.
Okay. So my response, and the reason I'm like asked that is because that's not uncommon, is
Mhm.
that you can purchase an existing home which when you're purchasing an existing home, you are inheriting someone else's problems.
Yeah.
Like, and maybe in your instance, like, what if that home also the tub overflowed? The homeowner didn't really think it was that big of a deal. Maybe it didn't go all down 3 levels. They dried it out, no big deal.
Yeah.
And so they don't mention it on the disclosure.
True.
You
Mm-hmm.
don't know what you're purchasing with an existing home. I'm not giving you guys the answer that you were probably hoping for, but when you're purchasing an existing home, the truth is you're also inheriting their ductwork and maybe like their pet dander and their whatever else,
Their
their dead
kid
skin
that,
cells in the
yeah.
ductwork.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So just know what you are getting. So
Mm.
if you are purchasing an existing home, you might have some maintenance items, but it is a good idea to not forego your inspections, have as long of a due diligence period as possible, bring in the mold inspector, the home inspector, scope the sewer lines, like do as much investigating as you can so you know what you're buying. But on the flip side of that, like if you can purchase a 2,000 square foot existing home, or alternatively you could build like 1,400 square feet of like a new build,
Right.
I would go do like that all day,
Mm-hmm.
because you can have full control. You know what the foundation is, what the exterior walls like. That's not always, feasible for everyone to get a construction loan to do all of that.
True.
But I'm all for just informed consent of knowing what you are getting yourself into,
Mm-hmm.
and what you are buying.
Do you get nervous for folks that love the old home aesthetic and so they buy maybe the 100-year-old house?
We could
And
build that.
we could build, yeah, I love this idea of building a new old home. I definitely want to do that. Is there any like I guess there is probably added fear of like older materials, like you said, asbestos potential. That's decades worth of someone else's, who knows how they lived in that home. Is that generally something that gives you pause if they're like, I'm going to buy this adorable, really old house and make it cute?
We are going through that right now with a client
Yeah.
who wanted to purchase. We have historic districts here, and a client is purchasing a historic home. The plan was to do somewhat of a cosmetic renovation and correct some issues on the exterior. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, these are like historic windows where like there's not even like proper seals and flashing. So I was like, okay, like we can help navigate that, but be prepared to completely gut the interior.
Mm.
And she said, well, no, we don't want to do that. We're gonna just do like a renovation in this section. Well, we are now at the stage the interior is gutted
Wow.
because there was asbestos, and then when that asbestos came down, it was discovered that the exterior sheathing was basically like drywall, and so it was all covered in mold because they had basically back then used like a paper face type of drywall almost for the exterior. And so then in renovation on an exterior home becomes a domino effect.
Mm.
You
Mm-hmm.
don't even know what your budget is going to be until you start to do the renovation,
Yeah,
Jeez.
that's a lot to
because you
inherit.
don't know what you're going to uncover.
Yeah.
I don't meet very many people that have purchased a home that's over 100 years old that tell me that things were flawless when they walked in the door.
Right. Totally.
And that's no shame to people, because I have a lot of good friends that have done it that are happy, but it's exactly that's it's
Well,
a century of life that has happened in there. My office
That's what I was gonna
is
say.
over 100 years old, but it was a 100% gut, so down to the studs and the brick. So the brick and the studs are the only thing that was there when we
Mm-hmm.
we walked in there to the office renovation knowing that that's what we were going to do. So
Good.
that was not we think we can save this, we can fix this. It'll be okay. This is a really rundown old building that is in an area that we wanted to be in, and we're going to fix it up. And
Mhm.
that's what we did. So
Yeah. I love that. I'm getting so many ideas. I love that you said we can build a new old home. I that is a dream of mine someday. I definitely want to do that. Um, do you have any last
I, I don't
curiosities?
want to take us on a crazy route of just like learning how to build a house. Although Elizabeth and I do dream of building a house someday, and sometimes it can feel like almost impossible. But it sounds like in your head, Christine, that it's a lot more doable than people maybe like Elizabeth and I know,
Mm-hmm.
only because we've never done it before. The steps to building a house or wanting to do a custom home build, is it just contacting a builder? Like, do you have to talk to a lender and secure money first? What does that process typically look like?
Typically, yes, you want to start with you want to have a piece of land where you want that.
Mm-hmm.
And then, depending on how that's purchased, you may be talking to banks at that point. You want to have a piece of land. And so then an architect that you select, and, we walk through like how to vet an architect. An architect and a contractor that you select, that is like a short-term marriage. You guys are going to be married, you're going to be talking to each other all the time, and you don't want that to be contentious.
Hmm.
And you are hiring them to implement your vision. That is what it is. It's not for them to come up with, pick floor plan A, B, or C, and we'll, throw it up for you. No, this is like a home that suits your needs, your family. We've worked with kids who have leukemia or, severe allergen issues. Like, that home needs to be designed for your family. And so then working with an architect, you can kind of like see like how many square feet you can build, where on the land, depending on the grading and the slope. And that can help kind of understand what that's going to look at cost wise, talking with different banks based off of the square footage. They're going to have requirements for the builder, being licensed and bonded and all of that. And same thing, we also walk through interviewing contractors and asking hard questions ahead of time during that interview process. And I've had clients who were disappointed that a contractor that they thought was going to be great, a contractor tell them, "No, I'm not going to be able to build your project." And we're like, "What happened?" So much better to know that then than mid construction when it's like not going very well.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, interviewing ahead of time and starting that whole documentation process. But on the side of doing like a custom build and funding and all of that, you want to just start with land, talking with architects, and getting an idea of like realistic budgets.
Mm-hmm. How much time should you allot yourself if you want to go slow and be really diligent in this process?
Well, as maybe you've noticed, those homes in your community that are in the like high 400s, they probably were dirt 4 months ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, production builds, mass planned communities, those suckers go up like 4 to 6 months, like lightning speed. Very different when you want to really like pre plan and have everything lined up for construction. It can take about maybe 4 to 6 months in like design development of plans and material selections and expectations. And then
Mm-hmm.
most builds, depending on square footage, we have some much larger builds that are like 36 months to build. But most of the time, they can be built, I would say like 2,000 square feet, can usually be built within 12 months.
Okay. That's not terrible. Okay, so walk us through specifically transitioning gears here a little bit. Exactly what your services are that you lend people and where they can find you when they inevitably have questions and they want to build these healthy homes for their families.
Yeah. So I'm a licensed contractor here in California. That's how this all kind of began. But then I quickly began getting a lot of messages of like, well, can you help me do that in Texas and Florida and East Coast? And so that's when I began doing more consulting. And so that's primarily what we're doing now,
Mm-hmm.
consulting on new builds and extensive gut renovations all over the US and Canada. And we do have a course that people can walk through from foundation all the way to paint to like absorb the information, learn how to communicate that with their contractor and build team. And so that can be really helpful because it gives you like this newfound empowerment of like, a lot of people don't speak up because they're like, I don't even know what I'm looking at here. I don't know what I don't know. And the contractor says this is like the best thing ever. So I'm just going to go with it. But having that collaborative relationship feels really good as a homeowner. So we have a course you can walk through and learn all of that and then implement. And then we do also occasionally I will open up one-on-one clients where I am the one doing the direct collaboration with the contractor and builder.
Oh, wow.
And lining up like third-party testing and all of that. So that is at a limited capacity, but that is my favorite way to really like go all in. And the response is really great for contractors and architects. And I would say very rarely are we having these like high level, healthy home, knowledgeable contractors and architects because it's very far and few between.
Right.
But even just run of the mill contractors that have never heard of a healthy home before, they're coming on board. Like they see the value in creating a home that's not going to leak as well. So yeah, so we have a course available and we do also have like a one-on-one application for those that are taking on like bigger projects and really need some support in talking with their team.
So if you're looking to build a home, you should first take the course and just familiarize yourself with the process, right? And then maybe start investigating and then also go to you for consulting for finding those people to have on your build team. Am I understanding that trajectory correctly?
Yeah, it also depends on the scope of the project. If you're doing like a smaller renovation or, if you and your husband are going to like DIY it yourself, that course might be that all you need because we
Okay.
include in there how to interview architects and builders if you need that. So the goal is to really have anyone feel confident in approaching their project and not just get steamrolled because the contractor says you need to do something a certain way.
Yeah.
That
Wow.
happens. That is so real.
It does.
Like she said that, and as people that have been through a very major home renovation, we let's see. I mean, we rebuilt over half. I mean, over what 2/3 of our home probably. Every bathroom, the whole basement, and the whole first floor. We rebuilt all of it, and
we were the GCs.
We GC'd the project with zero experience.
I
It was
was
great.
25 years old. It was awesome.
And
we had 2 little kids.
Every time we would meet with somebody else, we fired a couple people.
Christine, I needed you.
We went through the ringer, man, and people treated us like we didn't know anything.
Because we didn't.
We didn't, but they treated us like our opinions didn't matter a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And yeah, we were like the dumb kids trying to run a project that were ultimately paying all the bills. That yeah, it can really drive you to become a more cold person going through that process because people were really not pleasant to deal with.
Yeah.
And we definitely wanted to control a lot of things, and we did. And I think we did a really good job. Could we have done better? Oh my gosh, night and day now. If I did it again, it would just be a completely different situation with the experience that we have. And we learned everything the absolute hardest possible way. So please go take this course.
I know,
because
it's such a good resource.
The pain that we experienced, I would not wish it on my worst enemy. Oh my gosh. I mean, even just like the scope of the work and when to start what, and you can't do this until you do that, until you do this. And it was just like, and then another contractor would come in and be like, well, you don't have a vent pipe in for this. And so you're going to have to redo all that. And it was just like, oh my gosh, we should have talked to the HVAC people that closed off that, opening. And it's craziness. Love it. so true. You're going to get like the steamrolling stuff absolutely does happen. These people just want to get their job done really quickly, get their money paid, and they can get on to the next job. And yeah, Christine, I think you're doing great things. And I might like want to check out that course.
I'm for sure checking out the course. I need to know where we can find it. So what's your website? Where can people connect with you online? People need this like stat.
Yeah, we are we put out a lot of like free content on Instagram. That's all I can commit to platform wise. So we do Instagram. We have a podcast to put out like a good bit of like Q&A, kind of answering some questions there. The Holistic Homes podcast. And then you can check out our site at buyholistichomes.com, and we'll have information in there. Course will be there. And then we also have our one-on-one application in there. So
awesome. Thank you so much, Christine, for talking to our audience and sharing your insights today. This has been so great.
thank you.
Yeah, until next time.
Thank you again to today's podcast sponsors, Ancestral Supplements. If you guys try out that animal-based trifecta, that collagen, the colostrum, and the digestive enzymes, let me know what you think. Make sure to go over to ancestralsupplements.com/homegrown and use the code homegrown at checkout to save 15% off. Browse their website, see what resonates with you, and give it a try and let me know how you love it.